Welcome back to Retro Horror. I've got a non-horror review for a romance comedy. And you're probably thinking, based on my other videos, why the hell am I looking at a romance comedy? Two words, Charles Laughton. So, I've got the Criterion release of Hobson's Choice. And actually, Hobson's Choice, the title of the film, is a term, an English terminology for a person that has free choice to make a choice, but his options are limited to basically one. So yeah, it's based on a literary term as well. But Charles Laughton. Let me take a few minutes to talk about Charles Laughton because this movie is a lot different from what I would typically spend time watching. But I love Charles Laughton. And he's one of those guys that when you think of the roles he's portrayed, whenever I'm thinking of it, I always think, well, he was the best at that. He was the best at this. And other actors that portray roles like mafia heads or things like that, you think, well, they were good in that, but were they the best at it? I always use the terminology best when I think of Charles Laughton. For example, The Private Life of King Henry VIII. He was the best king of England that I could think of. When you think of Island of Dr. Moreau, and Island of Lost Souls, do you think of Marlon Brando, or do you think of Charles Laughton? I think of Charles Laughton. When you think of Captain Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty, Charles Laughton, man, he just blew it away. And then, how many actors have gone on to make one of the greatest films of all time, and certainly one of the best films in 1950, Night of the Hunter. And then finally, this is probably going to be heresy for some people, but when you think of The Hunchback, I think of Charles Laughton. I mean, I love Lon Chaney Sr., and certainly he defined the role, but Charles Laughton, I think, took it to new heights. And I think the reason he was so successful was because he also had his own contradictions. He thought of himself as grotesque and ugly, and thankfully that didn't inhibit his acting. He actually, I think, helped him in many roles to be successful. And of course, he was closet homosexual, but that's, he was able to hide that apparently pretty well. But yeah, I mean, he's just an interesting character and a great actor. He put his soul into the roles. For example, Nero and I, Claudius, which was an unfinished film of Corda's, he just stressed about the role to the point where he just couldn't perform almost. Anyway, I think he's certainly my top 10 actors of all time. I looked on AMC top actors. He doesn't even make the top 50, which is a travesty. But I mean, it's people like Christopher Walken and things. I mean, to not have Charles Laughton in the top 50 male actors of all time is a travesty. This film, so yeah, I'm on a predominantly because of his role with The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I've tried to watch all of his films, as many as I can that he's been in. And this one is, he plays a crotchety old man in Hobson's Choice. He's the crotchety old shopkeeper who, he's an English patriarch of a family of 3 daughters, the man of the house, the master, and he's the master of nothing. The comedy is, as he proclaims all these things and stomps around, proclaiming he's running the show. His daughters are running the show, which is probably the case for 9 out of 10 homes that have mainly daughters in their house, I would think. I mean, the women run the show, and these women run roughshod over him. And as much as he belly aches and yells and screams and tries to get his way, he's the only control he has over his life is going to the pub and getting drunk. That's it. He doesn't have any other control. He doesn't control his business. He doesn't control his home. It's a hoot. Just the way Charles Lawton plays these roles, um, and he did a great job. Well, he's done a great job with everything he's done. The Criterion release of this film has an audio commentary, a booklet, and a really good, nice booklet with some great pictures and great background on the film. It was directed by David Lean, um, and he this was an unusual film for David Lean. It's certainly for comedies are tough. Apparently very tough for someone that's not a specialist in that genre. But when you have an actor like Charles Lawton, it's going to work. I mean, Charles Lawton invested into the role, and he plays it to the hilt, the crotchety old man. I mean, um, I think the only other guy I can think of that perfected that role would be Walter Matthau. You know, so I would think that if you're interested in that in this film, it's the Criterion is an excellent choice. There's also a 60-minute a rare BBC documentary about his life, which was incredibly enlightening. And it's got Elsa Lancaster, who played Bride of Frankenstein, is his wife, and she talks about living with the genius of Charles Lawton and all his character flaws. And yeah, so it was a good film. I enjoyed it. It was kind of a change of pace for me from a horror type standpoint, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I would definitely recommend picking this up if you're a Criterion collector or a fan of Charles Lawton. Thanks for watching.